in the Swiss franc. And the Swiss began to defend against that because it was starting to increase by 15–20% their Swiss franc currency, and they couldn't handle that. They have a big export industry. They didn't want to destroy their economy just because the rest of Europe needed refuge from their pigs' debt. And it was denominated in euro. And we learned at that time that there were designations, markings on the euro bonds, where the German markings were valued higher than the Italian markings, for instance. But the point was that the Swiss National Bank instituted a 120 peg so they could buy up all the euros. Now they're sitting on a lot of euros, and it could be close to $1 trillion worth of euros. Then we learned in the next few years that the Swiss National Bank was buying a lot of FANG stocks, Facebook, Apple, Netflix, and Google. And their portfolio showed over $1 trillion in US stocks. Well, they were processing, in my opinion, a combination of dollar swap money from New York and the Fed, and mixing that with narco money from Ukraine. And they were infiltrating the US capital markets with narco money, and it was going to BlackRock and FANG stocks. Okay, that has to be unwound. They also did the buy equity, buy stock, sell gold. So they were buying the FANG stocks, buying S&P through narco money into BlackRock, and selling gold. They have to reverse that. So they're long in euros, they're short in gold, and they're long in US stocks. That has to be unwound. It's a big carry trade of sorts, but it's more of the label of arbitrage. The next big entity is OPEC. They have almost $3 trillion in annual sales, and they're moving away from the Treasury bill standard. A big event occurred, it was about 10 months ago or 9 months ago, where Saudi Arabia announced that they were going to accept Chinese yuan for oil sales to China. And a couple of other nations are using the yuan also. So the petrodollar standard died, and I think it was a couple of months ago, there was a formal funeral event documented for the petrodollar. The next big are two, and it's the pension funds in the United States. They're holding $37 trillion. 70% of it is managed corporate type. They're overloaded with treasury bonds, and they cannot make enough income off the treasury bonds to do the pension payouts. Correspondingly, the insurance companies are holding $8.2 trillion in funds, of which 62% are bonds, the majority are treasuries, and they also cannot earn enough yield on the bonds in order to pay for the insurance awards, like for life and casualty, like, car accidents. Oh my gosh, the narco funds, I'm almost done. The narco funds, they've got about $1.5 trillion per year in sales. They're known widely to be storing $100 bills. They're known widely to have invested heavily in Colombia. I believe I was told 8 years ago that the Bush crime family had $6 trillion. It's probably 8 or 9 now. And they bought Colombia. They bought Colombia. They bought the ports, the highways, the farms, the office buildings, the politicians, the banks. They bought Colombia. All right. So the narco funds are invested in tangible items, but they're sitting on a tremendous amount of cash. The Voice told me many years ago that they got numerous containers in the Greek ports like Piraeus, and they're loaded with shrink-wrapped $100 bills on pallets stacked up, 8 feet high. And each container might hold somewhere between $2 and $3 billion. Okay, that's cash. And believe it or not, the narcos are gradually migrating from dollar cash to gold, but they're also using Bitcoin. Okay, Big Pharma, they've got a $4.7 trillion market cap for the top 50. And much of it, I think, is hiding the big pharma firms and the vice presidents and executives. I believe a lot of their stock is hiding in BlackRock, and they will never, access it on the criminal court decisions, like the class action lawsuits. Oh, we got a class action lawsuit. Looks like 1.2 trillion in losses. It's time to go execute on the judgment. Oops, we can't find it. It's hiding in BlackRock and it's offshore. Okay, that's what I think is coming. The last point, actually, there's a new one that I came up with after posting this report. The military contractors. Globally, they have $2.2 trillion in annual spending budgets. 6 major U.S. military contractors command over 70% of a $770 billion market cap. They're invested in war. They like war. They promote war. They destabilize in order to make war. And the byproduct of that is millions of displaced homeless people. And they end up invading our southern shore border. The last one that came up was from reading that I did in the days after the report was posted. It's called the basis trade. Hedge funds short treasury bond futures and they buy the treasury bond, and they're at a $1.1 trillion volume now. Okay, here's the point, the conclusion from all this. These forces are going to battle for control. Many of them are going to the gold standard. The ones that don't go to the gold standard will be facing bankruptcy or severe losses. I don't think Langley and all their trillions of ill-gotten money from narco trade and other trafficking, I don't think they're going to sit by idly and allow their cash to be in a decayed state. So they're going to move. They're going to enter different investment groups. I think they're going to enter Bitcoin, XRP, gold, and silver. There's a really interesting thing going on. You probably know more about this than I do, but I think there's a lot of arbitrage trade of buying gold and selling silver. And we saw this very evident in April, May, June, where they took down a little bit of profit in gold and it went into silver and we zipped up to 33. And we're seeing it again during the August weeks with the Japanese centered crisis that Wall Street caused. They were buying gold as a refuge for financial crisis and selling silver for the economic decline. And, you know, we're using all this false economic data from the United States government to justify the background for 150 basis point rate cut. The biggest beneficiary of Fed actions will be a rise in the gold price. What they want to do is bring down the dollar, but I got news for them. It's really going to be the Chinese currency that'll go up, and it will not be the euro. So the dollar index is dominated by the euro, and the index cannot go down without the euro going up half as much. And therefore, given the strife in Europe, the Russian sanctions harming the German economy, the war generally, multilateral war in France, civil war, and the war on farmers in the Netherlands, the biggest grain and crop producers in Western Europe. They're bigger than France. They're bigger than Spain. Spain's great for wine. France is rather diversified. The Dutch are major farm producers, and they're under attack. Therefore, the European economy cannot justify a higher euro currency.
Right.
So when they cut interest rates on repeated basis, and the first one's probably going to be a nice big shock of 50 basis points. We had Jan Hatzius a couple of weeks ago come out from Goldman Sachs saying, for the following several reasons, we justify 150 basis point cut in the Fed funds. They're doing it. They just come up with this ridiculous scenario saying that unemployment is a little harmful, but inflation's under control. Oh, really? Have you checked your insurance costs recently? Have you checked your
Right.
food costs recently?
Right.
Here's a big phenomenon that I'm going to point out, Craig, and it is a mismatch between the micro and the macro. And I noticed this before I even started the newsletter. We have all these different components for price inflation going up, but the total composite is not going up anything like what the components are. So the macro doesn't match the micro. Individually, like Harris has nobody showing up at the campaign stops, or very few, or they're having to be paid homeless to show up. Yet the polls say that it's 50-50. No, it's more like 80-20 Trump ahead. The macro doesn't match the micro. And we're seeing it with the jobless rate. The jobless rate, we got like 25, 28% unemployment, but the jobless rate is really those who collect state unemployment insurance. So that's going down because people are dropping off the rolls. They're becoming homeless, and they're part of the little tent cities. They're joining the migrants, and they're disgusting examples and displays of the American urban decay. This is a sad commentary for what's happened to our country. But I'm optimistic. I will say that I believe the White Alliance has already won. They're now avoiding civil disorder, and it's beginning to spring up in Denver with the gangs, in Chicago with the gangs, in Texas with the gangs, and in Southern California, where the gangs are threatening school buses full of kids. Don't be surprised in the next couple of weeks, the Venezuelan gangs in Los Angeles capture 40 kids in a school bus and hold them ransom. This is where our Biden show has led our nation. And it's a foreign infiltration. It's Alex Soros funding with billions. It's foreigners, it's Latinos, it's Arabs, and they emptied the Venezuelan jails. I'd like to know, is it 10,000 prisoners in Venezuela?
Yeah.
Or is it 20,000? I don't have an answer to that yet.
Yeah, they're all here.
Wow. This is
go ahead, Jim. No, I just, and again,
they're going to want gold. They're going to want gold as a standard because they don't want to be bag holders of the treasury bonds. It has now become a toxic bond that's littered all through the global financial centers.
And I just to remind everybody, I mean, I mentioned how we weren't able to talk last weekend. I assume much of this, Jim, was in this most recent hat trick letter that you published, correct?
Yes.
So again, you don't have to wait until Jim and I talk. I mean, for God's sake, subscribe to the hat trick letter, okay? So you can get all regular updates and all this stuff. Jim, I want to ask you too in our last segment here about, I mean, you mentioned just the general mayhem that may be coming our way in the next 2 months, whether it's from, purposefully people driven across the border to cause this mayhem. Though I'm not sure that would be politically beneficial to the blue team. I have no idea, but anything's possible. Hell, they already took a shot at Trump and just barely missed on live TV. Are you concerned about the unknown unknowns over the, through the remainder of the year?
Yeah.
What's on your mind?
My military source, who didn't want to be named this time, it's a good source, and it's been helpful time and again in the past. But the word is out that a second attempt on the life of Trump occurred about 2 or 3 weeks ago. A second attempt in the middle of August, and it was a failure, mainly because Trump was not relying on Secret Service.
What did it entail?
I don't know. I don't know. Okay. There were no details, but
okay.
I'm guessing it was a shooter, but I don't really know.
Who knows? Yeah.
And what I was told is that Secret Service is the visible protection, but there's an unannounced, unpublicized, not so visible group of protectors who's operating now as a second layer and a more reliable layer for protection of Trump. And that's a very good thing.
Oh, shit, Jim. It's what you and I would do if I were him.
Well, yeah, he's got the money, but you
Yeah.
know, the law says that Secret Service is in charge of protection. So apparently Trump said, okay, but I'm going to have another layer,
Yeah.
whether you
We'll
like
have
it or
these guys
not,
too.
because you
Yeah.
guys aren't very competent. And they call it the ponytail squad because
Yeah.
they're diversity
Yeah.
driven
Yeah.
in their hiring as opposed to competence. I like the word meritocracy. Um,
Yeah. Hmm.
Merit based advancement and hiring. Well, we don't really have that in many places in the United States. Okay. Okay, back to the victory. I am assured that the victory is now known and done, but we have to go through the motions of the victory. We have to avoid the dead man switches for sabotage, and we have to round up these people. I'm told that after June 1st, there was a great acceleration in the arrests after June 1st. And then a month and a half later, there was another increase in the arrests. And this is going to sound really difficult for a lot of people to believe, but many, maybe the majority of the leadership posts and congressional posts and even the court positions are occupied by doubles working for the White Alliance. I mean, like Supreme Court justices. I got confirmed again that the Brunson case has been ruled in favor of Brunson to vacate the Biden show, to vacate 300 members of Congress, and to declare that Trump actually won. And part of the deal that I'm hearing about is that a lot of prosecutions and tribunals will be made a little lighter, not necessarily hanging, but prison in Greenland. I mean, this is where we're heading. The traitors are now flipping, and they're being replaced. I was told again, there's only one Supreme Court justice who's present, and that's Clarence Thomas. All the rest are in trouble.
Hmm.
This is a mockery for our democratic system. The Dems are fascist Marxists, and they're trying to redefine democracy, and it's not working. They're saying Trump is the biggest threat to democracy in modern day. No, the biggest threat to installed fascism since the Patriot Act and the takeover by the intelligence branch of the executive, which is the president, of the legislative, which is the Congress, and of the judicial, which is the courts. Everything operates now under the intelligence branch with this Politburo run by the inspector general named Horowitz, and he and his buddies are part of the Irish Catholic gang.
Jim Willie might be an Irish Catholic name.
I'm half Irish Catholic, thank you very much. The other half is WASP and a good sprinkle of German.
Aha.
Everybody needs a little German for
Hidden
the
Sie wollen.
intellect. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay. Jim. All right.
Yeah.
So back to the question.
What?
What worries you most? I mean, frankly, and again, I don't know the political benefit to either side from mayhem brought about by people that came here illegally over the last 12 to 24 months. But that's probably my biggest concern. What are your concerns over the next 9 weeks?
Well, let me focus on that issue specifically. Okay. Trump says we need to get. He was referring to the Venezuelan gangs in Denver and Chicago. We need to get these guys the hell out of the country. We're going to have the largest deportation project in American history. Well, that sounds good, and it's a really good plan. I mean, it's a good goal, but what is the plan?
Yeah, logistics.
If a couple came across a year and a half ago and they got a baby born in Texas, you can't get rid of them that easily.
Right.
If you got a working man who's like 47 years old, not military age, and he's got a job, he's working somewhere.
Yeah.
And he's doing just a decent citizen. And I'm glad I got into this country. You don't necessarily get rid of him.
Right.
Now, if they're receiving money, if they're told to vote damn fascist, if they're under orders to cause problems, like, hey, we want you to go out and find your 7 guys in your little group, and we want you to go break windows and loot some stores and begin some problems in Milwaukee. Okay. That's the sort of guy, you get him the hell out of here. If they had prison records, and that's why they were released from their home country, you send them back. Send them to Venezuela. Let them deal with it. Let them put those guys in the army or whatever. Put them in prison or hang them. I don't really care. Get them the hell out of our country. But there's going to be a good 30 to 50% they're not going to be able to find, and they're not going to be able to legally process out of the country. And some of them will be decent people. You need to convince them. You don't have to vote